I caught Victoria mocking my work to her lover on a Tuesday afternoon I'll never forget. My name is Johnny Crawford, and I'm 38 years old. After 15 years of 100-hour weeks, I'd transformed my grandfather's 30-acre farm into 300 acres worth $4 million. I built every inch of it with calloused hands and reinvested profits, while Victoria spent money on designer clothes and her Mercedes. Then I came home early from fixing a broken irrigation pump and found her with Dominic Parker, some real estate developer in a suit that cost more than my tractor payment. She told him I needed a real job, said I wasn't a real man because I smelled like diesel and honest work. She wanted half of everything in the divorce. She thought California's community property laws would hand her $2 million she never earned. I made sure she got exactly what she contributed. Nothing. And Dominic? He's facing 12 years in prison for fraud. But let me start from the beginning. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. The pump took 6 hours to fix. 6 hours lying in mud under that irrigation line, grease up to my elbows, fighting with seized bolts and cracked fittings. By the time I got it running again, I looked like I'd crawled through a swamp. I drove my truck back toward the house around 2 in the afternoon, expecting the place to be empty. Victoria had said she was going into town for groceries, said she'd be gone most of the day. But her Mercedes sat in the driveway when I pulled up. I cut the engine and sat there for a second listening. Male voices drifted from inside the house. Laughter. The kind of easy, comfortable laughter that didn't belong in my home on a Tuesday afternoon. I climbed out of the truck and walked to the kitchen door, pushed it open. The voices got clearer, coming from the living room. I moved through the kitchen, my work boots leaving mud prints on the tile Victoria always complained about, and stopped in the doorway to the living room. Victoria sat on our couch, the one I'd saved for 3 months to buy her, next to a man in a tailored suit, wine glasses on the coffee table, actual wine glasses at 2 in the afternoon. "Johnny," Victoria said, her face going white. "You're home early. Pump broke." I looked at the stranger. "Who's this?" The guy stood up, all 6 feet of pressed suit confidence. Looked like he'd walked out of a boardroom. "Dominic Parker. I'm a commercial real estate developer. Victoria and I have been discussing some investment opportunities." "Investment opportunities," I repeated slowly. My hands were still black with grease. In my living room, with wine. Victoria stood, smoothing her dress. "Johnny, this is business." "Oh, bullshit." I took 3 steps into the room. "How long?" The silence stretched. "How long?" Dominic's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Listen, friend, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm not your friend." I turned to Victoria. "Answer the question." She lifted her chin and I saw something ugly flash across her face. 6 months. And before you start throwing things and making a scene, maybe you should ask yourself why I needed to look elsewhere. Why you needed... The words nearly choked me. Yes, Johnny. Why? You're never here. You're always on that godforsaken farm, covered in dirt, smelling like manure. I married a man, not a farmhand who can barely afford to take me to dinner anymore. Dominic actually smirked. "Victoria's mentioned you work quite a bit. That must be hard on a marriage." The casual condescension in his voice lit something inside me. "I work 100 hours a week," I said quietly, "keeping this farm profitable so that she," I pointed at Victoria, "can drive a Mercedes, wear designer clothes, and apparently screw real estate developers in the home I'm paying for." Victoria's face went red. "Don't you dare. You want to talk about real jobs, Victoria? Let's talk. I'm up at 4:30 every single morning. I manage 300 acres of crops, maintain 20 pieces of equipment, coordinate with distributors, deal with weather that can destroy months of work in an afternoon. I've built this operation from 30 acres my grandfather left me into something that grosses $400,000 a year. That's my not real job." Dominic straightened his tie. "Look, clearly this is a private matter. Sit down." The command in my voice stopped him mid-step. "You wanted to be here, you're going to hear this. Victoria, you want to know why we don't go out to fancy dinners? Because every extra dollar gets reinvested into the farm. Because I'm building something that'll last, something that'll set us up for life. But you already knew that." You just decided you'd rather have a sugar daddy in a suit than a husband who actually works. He's a real professional, Victoria spat. He doesn't come home looking like he crawled through a sewer. He has an actual career, not some what? Say it. Not some backwoods hobby farm that you're obsessed with. Her voice went shrill. Dominic makes real money. He owns properties worth millions. He takes me to restaurants where people don't stare at us because my husband looks homeless. I turned to Dominic. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave my house. You're going to delete Victoria's number. And you're going to pray I don't find out where you work. Because if I do, I'm going to tell every single business associate you have exactly what kind of man you are. You're threatening me. Dominic actually laughed. Do you have any idea who I know you're the kind of man who screws another man's wife in his own home. That tells me everything I need to know. Now get out before I remove you myself. For a second, I thought he might push back. Then he saw something in my face. Probably the 15 years of throwing hay bales and wrestling livestock, and thought better of it. Victoria, he said smoothly, call me later. She won't be calling you from this house, I said, or this phone plan, or with anything else I'm paying for. Dominic left. The door clicked shut. Victoria whirled on me. You have no right. I have every right. This is my house, my farm, my life that I've been killing myself to build while you've been shopping and screwing around behind my back. Your farm, she sneered. Your precious farm. That's all you care about, not me, not us, just your obsession with being some kind of agricultural martyr. I did it for us, Victoria, for our future. We don't have a future, not anymore. She grabbed her purse. I'm done living like this. I deserve better than a husband who'd rather play in the dirt than provide a real life for his wife. Then leave, I said. Right now. Because as of this moment, you're cut off from everything. I'll have divorce papers drawn up by Friday. She laughed, actually laughed. Good luck with that. California's a community property state, Johnny. I'm entitled to half of everything. Half the farm, half the equipment, half the profits. You've been so busy working, maybe you forgot to pay attention to your legal rights. Or should I say, my legal rights. She walked toward the door, then paused. Dominic's already offered to help me with a lawyer. A good one. The kind who'll make sure I get what I'm owed for putting up with 15 years of this joke of a marriage. Enjoy your farm, Johnny. I'll enjoy half its value. The door slammed. I stood in the living room, the wine glasses still on the coffee table, and pulled out my phone. Called Adrian Moore, my attorney, one of my oldest friends from high school. Adrian, I said when he answered, I need you to do 3 things. 1, file for divorce immediately on grounds of adultery. 2, freeze all joint accounts. 3, get me every piece of financial protection we can put in place before she tries to raid the farm. Jesus, Johnny, what happened? Came home early, caught her with another man. She's already threatening to take half of everything. How long? 6 months, she said. And you have proof? I thought about the wine glasses, the timestamps. I will. Can you recommend a private investigator? I'll text you a name within the hour. Johnny, I'm sorry, man. Don't be. Just help me protect what's mine. Consider it done. I hung up and walked through the house Victoria and I had shared for 15 years. She'd never built anything. She'd only ever taken. And now she was about to learn the difference between a man who works for what he has and a woman who thought she deserved it anyway. Wednesday morning, 7 a.m. I sat in a booth at a diner off Highway 99, nursing black coffee and watching the door. The private investigator Adrian recommended was supposed to meet me here. Claire Hernandez, former police detective who'd gone private 5 years ago. She walked in exactly on time. A woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and the no-nonsense posture of someone who'd spent years dealing with humanity's worst. She spotted me immediately and slid into the booth. Mr. Crawford, she said. Adrian says you need surveillance on your wife. Suspected affair? Confirmed affair, I corrected. Caught them yesterday, but she's claiming 6 months, and I need documentation. Photos, videos, communications, everything. Claire pulled out a tablet. Names of all parties? Victoria Crawford, my wife. Dominic Parker, her affair partner. He's in commercial real estate, she typed rapidly. What's your goal here? Just divorce evidence, or are you looking for more? I met her eyes. She threatened to take half the farm, said California community property law was on her side. I need everything I can use to prove she's been planning this, that she's unfit to claim any part of what I've built. Claire leaned back. Full surveillance package, background deep dive on both of them, communication intercepts if possible. You're looking at $15,000 for a month of work. I didn't hesitate. Do it. And Claire, I want to know everything about Dominic Parker, where his money comes from, who he's connected to, any skeletons in his closet. If he's helping her come after my farm, I want leverage against him too. She smiled grimly. Now we're talking. I'll have preliminary findings within 72 hours. I left the diner and drove straight to the farm. Fernando Garcia was waiting by the equipment barn, his weathered face creased with concern. Boss, he said, you okay? You look like hell. Victoria and I are done. She's been cheating and now she's going after the farm. Fernando's jaw tightened. ¿Qué? After everything. I know. Listen, I need you to do something for me. I need a complete accounting of every hour I've worked for the last 3 years. Security footage from the property cameras, timestamps on equipment use, fuel logs, everything that proves exactly how much time and labor I've put into this operation. You think she's going to claim she contributed? I know she is. And I need to prove she contributed exactly nothing. Fernando nodded slowly. I'll pull everything. Boss, you want me to testify? If it comes to that, I might. Would you? In a heartbeat. Victoria never set foot in these fields unless it was to complain. You built this place yourself. I'll make sure everyone knows it. I spent the rest of Wednesday documenting everything. Every financial record, every contract, every piece of equipment purchased, every improvement made to the property. I photographed the ledgers showing Victoria's spending versus my farm reinvestment. I compiled the credit card statements that showed her shopping while I was buying seeds and repair parts. By midnight, I had a file 4 inches thick. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Claire. Found Parker's residence. Your wife's Mercedes is in his driveway. Surveillance begins tomorrow. Also did some preliminary checking. Parker's got 3 properties in foreclosure he hasn't disclosed to investors. Might be useful. I smiled in the darkness of my office. Let them think they'd won. Let Victoria believe her smooth-talking real estate developer would protect her. I was about to show both of them what happens when you try to steal from a man who's built everything from the ground up. Thursday morning, 10 a.m. I walked up the narrow staircase above the coffee shop in downtown Fresno and pushed through the door into Adrian Moore's law office. The place was all exposed brick and law books that actually looked used instead of decorative. Adrian had been my friend since high school. He'd been student body president while I'd been in FFA. But we'd bonded over being the only 2 kids in our class who actually gave a damn about building something real. Johnny, he said, standing from behind his desk. Sit. Coffee? I'm good. He closed the door and moved back to his desk, pulling out a legal pad already covered in notes. Okay, I've reviewed everything you sent me. Financial records, property deeds, incorporation documents, the works. And I've got news, some good, some complicated. Start with the complicated. California is a community property state. That means any assets acquired during the marriage are presumed to be equally owned by both spouses. Victoria's right about that. He held up a finger before I could respond. However, there are significant exceptions. Assets acquired before marriage, inheritances and gifts are separate property. You inherited 30 acres from your grandfather before you married Victoria. That land and any appreciation from it is yours alone. What about the other 270 acres? I bought those during the marriage. That's where it gets interesting. You purchased them using profits from the original 30 acres, correct? Every penny. Then we have a strong argument for separate property tracing. If we can prove the expansion came from your separate property farm income, not from commingled marital assets, we can potentially shield a significant portion from division. Something loosened in my chest. How significant? Depends on how clean your books are, but potentially 70 to 80% of the total farm value. And the other 20 to 30? Adrian leaned forward. That's where we negotiate. Or litigate. Johnny, I have to ask, do you want to fight this to the bitter end or are you willing to settle? What would settlement look like? You give her something, maybe a cash payout, maybe a small percentage of farm profits for a limited time, and she walks away. Clean break, minimal court costs, no drawn-out trial. And if I fight? Then we go to war. We prove she contributed nothing to the farm's success. We document the affair, argue that her infidelity represents dissipation of marital assets, all the money she spent while planning to leave. We make her look so bad that even a community property state judge won't want to give her half. Can we win? Adrian met my eyes. With what you've given me? Yeah, I think we can. But it'll cost you, emotionally, financially, and time-wise. We're talking about a year, maybe 18 months of litigation, tens of thousands in legal fees, and Victoria will make it ugly. I stood, pacing to the window that overlooked the street below. My hands clenched at my sides. Adrian, I've worked 100 hours a week for 15 years building that farm. I've sacrificed everything, sleep, health, any kind of normal life, to turn that land into something worth protecting. And she spent 6 months screwing some real estate developer and telling him I wasn't a real man because I smell like honest work instead of cologne. Jesus. I turned back to face him. So when you ask me if I want to fight or settle, here's my answer. I want to destroy her case so thoroughly that she walks away with nothing but the clothes on her back and the memory of what it cost her to betray me. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, a sharp, dangerous smile I'd never seen on him before. Okay then, let's talk strategy. We spent the next 3 hours mapping it out. Adrian would file the divorce petition immediately, citing adultery with evidence to follow. We'd subpoena Victoria's phone records, credit cards, and bank statements. Claire would continue surveillance on Victoria and Dominic, documenting their relationship. Fernando would provide testimony about my work hours and Victoria's absence from farm operations. But the kill shot, Adrian explained, would be something else entirely. California law allows for reimbursement when community property is used for non-communal purposes, he said. Every dollar Victoria spent on herself while you were reinvesting in the farm, that's community money used for her sole benefit. We can demand reimbursement. How much are we talking? Adrian pulled up a spreadsheet on his laptop. Based on the records you provided, over the last 5 years alone, Victoria spent approximately $230,000 on personal expenses. Clothing, spa treatments, her car, shopping trips. Meanwhile, you reinvested your salary back into farm operations. So we can claim she owes the community, meaning me, that money back? Exactly. And if she can't pay it, it comes out of her share of any settlement. I felt something cold and satisfied settle in my chest. Good. There's one more thing. Adrian's expression turned serious. The PI mentioned Dominic Parker has properties in foreclosure. That suggests financial trouble. If he's been presenting himself as wealthy to Victoria, but he's actually drowning in debt. She picked the wrong lifeboat, I finished. Exactly. And if we can prove he manipulated her with false promises of financial security, that he encouraged her to pursue maximum asset division because he needed her money to save his failing business, then she's not just a cheating wife. She's either complicit or stupid. Adrian pointed at me. Either way, it destroys her credibility. I left Adrian's office feeling like I was carrying a loaded weapon. Victoria wanted to play hardball. She'd brought a tennis racket to a gunfight. Friday evening, 3 days after I'd first met with Claire, I sat in my truck parked at the edge of the north field where cell reception was clearest. My phone rang. Claire's number. I've got 36 hours of surveillance, she said without preamble. And Johnny, this is even better than we hoped. How much better? Victoria's been staying at Dominic's condo in downtown Fresno. 2-bedroom, high-rise, probably costs him $4,000 a month. They've been out to dinner 7 times in 4 days. Nice places, too. I've got photos of them at Tahoe Joe's, Fleming's, the Annex Kitchen. Wine, appetizers, steaks. He's easily dropping $300 to $500 per meal. Good. That establishes the relationship timeline and shows pattern of behavior. It gets better. Wednesday night I followed them to a law office. Garrett and Associates specializes in family law. They were inside for 90 minutes. When they came out, Victoria was smiling. Dominic had his arm around her. My grip tightened on the phone. She's already got representation. Looks like it. But here's the interesting part. I did a deep dive on Dominic Parker like you asked. The man's a house of cards. He's got 7 properties, but 5 are underwater. He's got 3 separate loans in default, totaling about $1.2 million. His biggest investor, a guy named Gerald Roberts, has filed suit against him for fraud and misrepresentation. He's broke. Worse than broke. He's running a shell game using new investor money to make payments on old debts. And Johnny? I think Victoria's his next investor. The pieces clicked into place. He's not with her for love. He's with her for the farm money. That'd be my read. A woman about to divorce a farm owner worth millions. That's not a relationship. That's a business opportunity. Can you prove it? Not yet. But I'm monitoring his communications. If he's coordinating with her attorney, if there's any evidence of financial motive, I'll find it. Do it. And Claire, I need you to document every penny he spends on her. Every dinner, every gift, every night in that expensive condo. Adrian thinks we can argue dissipation of marital assets, that Victoria was spending community money preparing to leave. I'm on it. One more thing. Victoria called her sister yesterday, Diane Sanders. They met for coffee, and I got close enough to pick up some of the conversation with a parabolic mic. Victoria told her sister, quote, "Johnny doesn't know what's coming. My lawyer says I'll get half of everything, and then Dominic and I can finally start our real life together." A cold fury settled over me. Send me everything. Transcripts, photos, timestamps. All of it. I'll have a full package to you and Adrian by Monday morning. I sat in the truck for a long time after hanging up, watching the sun set over the fields I'd spent 15 years cultivating. Victoria thought she was going to take half of this? She thought her real estate con artist boyfriend was going to swoop in and save her? They had no idea what was coming. 2 months later, Thursday morning, 9 a.m., Macy Roberts sat across from me in Adrian's conference room, her expensive suit perfectly pressed, her expression professionally pleasant. Victoria sat beside her, trying to look sympathetic. The court reporter's fingers hovered over her keyboard. "Mr. Crawford," Macy began, "can you describe a typical work week on your farm?" "Monday through Sunday, I'm up at 4:30 a.m. I check equipment, assess field conditions, coordinate with my farm manager, Fernando Garcia, on daily tasks. Depending on season, I'm planting, maintaining irrigation, treating crops, managing harvest, handling distribution. I typically work until 7 or 8 p.m. During harvest season, often midnight." "And your wife, Mrs. Crawford, did she participate in these activities?" "No. Never. Not in 15 years. Macy made a note. "Did she manage the household while you worked?" "We have a cleaning service. She didn't cook. We ate out or I cooked when I had time. She didn't handle finances. I did all bookkeeping for both the farm and household." "What did she do, Mr. Crawford?" I looked directly at Victoria, who sat beside her lawyer trying to look sympathetic. "She spent money. That's what she did." "Objection," Macy said smoothly. "Argumentative." Adrian didn't even look up from his notes. "He's answering your question, counselor." Macy shifted tactics. "Mr. Crawford, the farm is worth approximately $4 million according to your financial disclosures. Do you contend that your wife contributed nothing to that value?" "Not one thing. She was your wife for 15 years. Surely the emotional support, the partnership of marriage." "She wasn't a partner. She was a dependent. And for the last 6 months she was an adulterer who was planning to leave me and take half of what I built." Victoria's face flushed red. "You're so—" "Mrs. Crawford," Macy said sharply, "don't speak." But Victoria was done playing docile victim. "You want to know what I contributed, Johnny? I put up with 15 years of being married to someone who cared more about dirt than his own wife. 15 years of you choosing the farm over me every single time. 15 years of living like we were poor when we weren't. We weren't poor because I worked 100 hours a week while you shopped," I said calmly. "And you didn't put up with anything. You lived in a beautiful home, drove a luxury car, wore designer clothes, and apparently had plenty of time to conduct an affair while I was in the fields keeping you comfortable." "That's enough," Macy interjected. "Mr. Crawford, let's talk about marital assets." The deposition continued for another 2 hours. She probed every asset, every purchase, every financial decision made during the marriage. But every answer I gave came back to the same truth. I'd built the farm. I'd generated the income. I'd made every significant financial decision while Victoria spent the fruits of my labor. By the time Macy called for a recess, she looked frustrated. "Your client's very confident," she said to Adrian as we packed up. "I hope he can back it up in court." "Oh, he can," Adrian replied. "Discovery's going to be very enlightening, counselor." Very enlightening indeed. Macy and Victoria left, Victoria's heels clicking sharp and angry down the hallway. Adrian turned to me, barely containing his satisfaction. "You did perfectly." She lost her composure, admitted she felt entitled to the farm's value despite contributing nothing, and every answer you gave reinforced that she was a dependent, not a partner. 2 weeks later, mid-afternoon, I was in the equipment barn, elbow deep in a tractor's transmission, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. Adrian's name lit up the screen. "Yeah," I answered, wedging the phone between my ear and shoulder. "We got the phone records." Adrian's voice was electric. "Johnny, this is gold." I straightened up, wiping grease from my hands. "How gold?" "Victoria and Dominic have been communicating for 8 months, not 6. The affair started 2 months earlier than she admitted. But more importantly, and this is the kill shot, they've been discussing the divorce settlement since before she even filed." My grip tightened on the phone. "Explain." "Text messages between them. March 15th, 3 weeks before you caught them. Victoria texts Dominic, 'My lawyer says California is community property. I'll get at least $2 million from the farm.' And Dominic replies, 'That'll solve everything. We can clear my debts and start fresh.' I felt something cold settle in my chest. He's been coaching her, using her. It's textbook financial manipulation, and there's more. April 3rd, Victoria texts, 'Johnny's working late again. He'll never see this coming.' Dominic replies, 'Good.' The less prepared he is, the better for us." "Us," I repeated slowly. "They're partners. This isn't a relationship. It's a conspiracy. That's exactly how we're going to present it. Johnny, with this evidence, we can argue that Victoria engaged in a calculated scheme to defraud you of marital assets. That Dominic Parker manipulated her into the affair specifically to access farm money to cover his failing real estate business. Will that hold up? In California, community property is pretty ironclad, but judges have discretion on how to divide assets based on conduct. Fraud, waste, and financial misconduct can absolutely influence the split. Combined with your separate property arguments and the reimbursement claims, we can bury her. We can reduce her settlement to almost nothing, maybe 10%, maybe less." I thought about Victoria's smug face in that deposition, about her text messages planning to take my farm, about 8 months of lying to me while sleeping with another man and plotting to steal my life's work. "Adrian," I said slowly, "I want to go further. I want Dominic Parker exposed. I want everyone he does business with to know exactly what kind of man he is. That's not really part of the divorce. I don't care. Claire found that investor suing him, Gerald Roberts. I want to talk to him. I want to know everything about Dominic's business practices, and then I want to make sure every person considering doing business with him knows the truth." Adrian was quiet for a moment. "You're not just fighting the divorce anymore, are you? She chose him over 15 years of marriage. She chose his promises of easy money over a man who actually worked for every dollar. And he used her to try to steal from me. So no, I'm not just fighting the divorce, I'm making sure they both pay for what they tried to do." "Okay," Adrian said finally. "But Johnny, be careful. There's justice, and then there's revenge. Make sure you know which one you're pursuing." "I'm pursuing both," I said, "and I'm going to get them." The next morning, Claire arranged the meeting at a coffee shop off Herndon Avenue. I spotted Gerald Roberts immediately, heavyset man in his 60s, polo shirt and khakis with the tired, bitter look of someone who'd been burned badly and was still carrying the scars. "Mr. Crawford," he said, standing to shake my hand. His grip was firm but weary. "Gerald, thanks for meeting me." He sat back down, his weathered face tight with anger that hadn't faded. "Claire said you had questions about Dominic Parker. I'm divorcing my wife. She's been having an affair with Parker. and I have reason to believe he's manipulating her financially. Gerald's expression darkened. Then she's not the first. Sit down. I'll tell you exactly what kind of man Dominic Parker is. I leaned forward, ready to gather every piece of ammunition I needed to destroy both Victoria and Dominic. Gerald leaned back in his chair, his expression carrying the weight of a man who'd been financially gutted and was still bleeding. If Victoria's having an affair with Dominic Parker and you think he's manipulating her financially, then she's not the first. Sit down. I'll tell you exactly what kind of man he is. Claire had her tablet out, already recording. Smart. Over the next hour, Gerald laid out a pattern of fraud that was breathtaking in its audacity. Him and 4 other investors, names I recognized from the local business community, had pooled about $3 million total to develop a commercial property in Clovis. Dominic had pitched it beautifully. Retail complex, high-traffic location, guaranteed returns of 30% within 2 years. The property exists, Gerald said, his voice bitter. That's the thing. It's not a complete con. But Dominic's been bleeding the investment dry. Fake contractor bills, phantom expenses, kickbacks to shell companies he controls. We finally got access to the books 3 months ago, and the development fund is nearly empty. How much did he steal? I asked. Approximately $2.1 million. I felt Claire stiffen beside me. That was real money, the kind of theft that destroyed lives. We've filed a civil suit, Gerald continued. The DA's looking at criminal fraud charges, but that takes time. Months, maybe a year before it goes to trial. Meanwhile, Dominic's still operating, still looking for new investors to pay off the old ones. It's a Ponzi scheme with real estate as the cover. And you think Victoria is his next mark? If she's about to come into money from a divorce settlement? Absolutely. Gerald looked me dead in the eye. Claire showed me the surveillance. I've seen how he operates. He romances them, makes promises, plays the devoted boyfriend who just needs a little help with this one incredible opportunity. And the moment they have access to cash, he pitches the deal. Your money disappears into his web of shell companies, and by the time you realize you've been conned, he's already moved on to the next victim. The coffee in front of me had gone cold. I didn't care. Gerald, I said carefully, would you be willing to testify about this? In divorce court, if needed. Gladly. His smile was grim and savage. I'd love to see that son of a bitch get what's coming to him. Then I might have a proposition for you. I leaned forward. My divorce case can expose Dominic's pattern of targeting women for financial gain. That strengthens your civil case and the DA's criminal case. Meanwhile, your fraud evidence destroys any credibility Victoria might have about Dominic being a legitimate businessman worthy of her loyalty. We help each other. Gerald didn't hesitate. I'm in. What do you need? Everything. Documentation of the fraud, timeline of when Dominic promised returns versus when he actually stole the money, names of the other investors willing to talk. Anything that shows this is a pattern, not a one-time mistake. You'll have it by Friday. Gerald stood, extending his hand. Take him down, Mr. Crawford. For both of us. We shook on it. 3 weeks before the scheduled November trial, my phone rang on a Tuesday morning while I was checking irrigation lines in the West Field. Claire's name on the screen. Johnny, she said, her voice electric with excitement. Get to Adrian's office, now. You're going to want to see this in person. What is it? Just get here. I made the drive in 20 minutes, adrenaline building with every mile. When I pushed through Adrian's office door, he and Claire were waiting in the conference room, a laptop open on the table showing what looked like a bank statement. What am I looking at? I asked, moving closer. Claire smiled. That's Dominic Parker's business account. And notice the transfer dated yesterday. $50,000 from Victoria Crawford. I stared at the screen, trying to process what I was seeing. Bank statements weren't exactly my specialty. I dealt in soil composition and crop yields, not shell companies and fraud. What am I looking at? I asked. Claire tapped the laptop screen. That's Dominic Parker's business account. And notice the transfer dated yesterday. $50,000 from Victoria Crawford. The number swam into focus. There it was, clear as day. Victoria's name, the amount, the date. She gave him money, I said slowly. She did. Claire scrolled down slightly and noticed the memo line, investment, Riverside Development. Adrian leaned forward, his expression sharp. There is no Riverside Development. We checked. It's a shell company Dominic created last month. Victoria just handed him $50,000 of marital funds for a fake investment opportunity. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Can we prove it's fake? Already did, Claire said, pulling up another document. Corporation registered to a P.O. box. No actual business address. No employees. No permits filed with the city. Nothing. It exists solely on paper to receive Victoria's money. Which means, Adrian continued, barely containing his satisfaction, Victoria just engaged in dissipation and waste of marital assets by giving community property funds to her affair partner for a fraudulent investment. Johnny, this is the smoking gun. With this combined with everything else we have, I can force a settlement so one-sided Victoria will be lucky to walk away with a used car. Do it, I said. Adrian drafted the settlement demand that afternoon. I watched him type, each clause another nail in Victoria's coffin. Victoria would receive, I would keep. The alternative, Adrian made crystal clear in his letter to Macy Roberts, was going to trial where we'd present evidence of 8 months of affair planning, text messages proving financial conspiracy, Victoria's $50,000 transfer to a fake company, Dominic's history of fraud, Victoria's $230,000 in reimbursable personal spending, and her zero contribution to farm operations. Your client can sign this offer, Adrian wrote, or she can take her chances in court and likely walk away with nothing but legal debt. 3 days later, Macy called. Adrian put her on speakerphone so I could hear. Your client is being unreasonable, Macy said, her professional pleasantness strained. Mrs. Crawford is entitled to what a judge decides to give her. Adrian interrupted smoothly. And after we present evidence that she conducted an 8-month affair while plotting to defraud my client with her boyfriend's investment scams, I don't think she's going to get much sympathy. That's a serious accusation. We have phone records, text messages, bank transfers, and we have a witness, Gerald Roberts, who'll testify about Dominic Parker's pattern of financial fraud. Do you really want to go to trial with this counselor? Silence stretched across the line. I need to discuss this with my client, Macy said finally. You've got 72 hours, Adrian replied. After that, the offer drops to $50,000, and we file a motion for sanctions based on her fraudulent transfer. The call ended. 48 hours later, Macy sent the signed settlement agreement. Victoria would get her $75,000 and her car. Everything else was mine. Adrian called me with the news. I was in the south field checking the irrigation system when my phone rang. It's done, he said. She signed. I should have felt triumphant. Should have felt vindicated. And I did, to a degree. But there was something else underneath it. Something colder and more calculating. I'm not done, I told Adrian. Not even close. Johnny. With the divorce settled, I'm turning my full attention to Dominic Parker. Gerald's been serious about his civil suit, and I've already provided all of Claire's surveillance evidence and the bank records showing Victoria's transfer to strengthen his case. But I want more than Gerald's lawsuit, Adrian. What are you talking about? I want everyone to know what Dominic Parker really is. I watched the sun glint off the irrigation pipes. Pipes I'd installed myself, with money I'd earned through honest work. I'm going to compile everything Claire found. Every foreclosed property, every defaulted loan, Gerald's civil suit, the pattern of creating shell companies, the pattern of targeting women for financial exploitation. And then what? Then I'm going to send it to every real estate professional, every investor group, every business association in Central California, anonymous, factual, devastating. 1 week after settlement, I sat in my farm office at 11 p.m., the only light coming from my laptop screen. The house was quiet. Too quiet maybe, but in a good way. The kind of silence that comes from not having someone around who resents every minute you spend working. Claire's files were spread across my desk. 5 foreclosed properties with Dominic's name attached. 3 defaulted loans totaling $1.2 million. Gerald Roberts' civil suit documenting the theft of $2.1 million through fake expenses and shell companies. The pattern was clear as day once you laid it all out. and I was about to make sure everyone saw it. I opened a new email account. Nothing traceable, just a generic address that could have belonged to anyone. Then I started compiling. Every document Claire had found, every court filing, every foreclosure notice, the whole ugly picture of what Dominic Parker really was underneath that expensive suit. I titled the email, Due Diligence Report, Dominic Parker. No commentary, no accusations, just facts and documentation, the kind of thing any responsible investor would want to see before putting money into a deal. I pulled up the contact lists for every real estate association, investor group, and business network in Central California. Clicked send. Then I shut the laptop and went to bed. 2 weeks later, the effect was immediate and catastrophic. Claire called me with updates I hadn't even asked for. 3 major investment deals Dominic had been negotiating fell through within days. 2 of his remaining properties went into foreclosure when the banks realized what they were dealing with. And the DA's office? They upgraded his case from civil fraud investigation to criminal fraud charges. Dominic Parker's carefully constructed house of cards was collapsing in real time. I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized, my phone rang with a number I'd deleted, but still recognized. I almost didn't answer. Almost. Johnny? Victoria's voice was small, broken. Nothing like the smug confidence she'd had in that deposition. I need help. With what? Dominic's gone. Her voice cracked. He took the $50,000 I gave him and disappeared. The Riverside development doesn't exist. He used me. I know, I said, my voice ice cold. I tried to tell you, but you were too busy mocking my real job to listen. Please. I'm living with Diane. I don't have any money. The divorce settlement is almost gone. That's not my problem anymore, Victoria. You made your choices. You decided a con artist in a suit was better than a husband who actually worked. You plotted with him to steal from me. And now you're facing the consequences. I was wrong. Yes, I said. You were. About everything. About me. About him. About what constitutes a real job and a real life. I spent 15 years building something meaningful while you spent money and cheated. Now you have exactly what you contributed to our marriage. Nothing. I hung up. 6 months after the divorce, I stood in the south field during harvest, watching the combines work through the corn. Fernando stood beside me, both of us surveying the operation we'd built together. Hell of a year, boss, he said. Hell of a year, I agreed. $420,000 in gross income. Net profits up 38% from the previous year. Without Victoria's spending, I'd been able to reinvest aggressively. New equipment, improved irrigation, better crop rotation. The farm was thriving. And me? I was genuinely happy. I'd started dating Amy Rodriguez, who taught agriculture science at the community college. She understood farming, understood the hours, understood the dedication required. She came out to the farm in work boots, not heels, and she looked at the fields with appreciation instead of disdain. She was real. More than I could ever say about Victoria. You hear about Victoria? Fernando asked carefully. No, and I don't want to. Just thought you should know. She's working at a Target in Fresno. Diane told my wife. I let that sink in. Victoria Crawford, who'd mocked my real job, was now working retail for minimum wage. And Parker? Criminal trial starts next month. Gerald Roberts and 5 other investors are testifying. DA says he's looking at 10 years for fraud. Good. 1 year after the divorce, I proposed to Amy in the South Field. She said yes immediately, laughing and crying at the same time, her hands covered in the same soil I'd spent 2 decades cultivating. We got married in a small ceremony at the farm. Fernando was my best man. My mother cried happy tears. After the wedding, after the guests had left, Amy and I stood alone in the farmhouse. She really tried to take all this from you, Amy said softly. She tried. And you stopped her. I protected what was mine, what I built. Amy kissed me. That's what I love about you, Johnny. You don't just work hard. You defend what you've created. You don't let people take from you. Never again, I promised, and I meant it. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.